y'all had asked me for a quick video on how to run the Power Through dashboard report, how to update this main thing. So this is the dashboard Google Sheet report that we put together every week. It's got your stats on total amounts raised and things like that by category, and it also breaks it out by page, and it breaks it out by individual email. It breaks it out. We call the tab email performance, but it really should be email segment. So it shows for each blast we did how we broke it up into individual segments with projections and results. So we're going to talk through all of this stuff over the next couple of minutes. One thing to note, I lost my access to the ActionKit account, so I can't actually run new reports or send you links to some of the reports. So Matt, if you're watching this, you know how to find them. I think they're all the things that are tagged with PT like this. It starts like that, and then it'll have the rest of the report name. And for the dashboard, the two things that we run, so I can't show you this because I can't log into ActionKit, but this email performance or email segments tab, all we do is we go into each individual email blast that we send. So when we send, as you can tell, we often segment things into subject lines for the content, the main send to our non-donor segment. That's usually the biggest in terms of number of people who get the blast. We have current and lapsed, or sometimes those are two separate ones. Current and lapsed is separate. Sometimes we've done Trump bump. More recently, we've been using this segment called recent action takers. So you can see over here, the way that this sheet repeats each time we send an email, this black bar, the title would essentially be, some kind of reference to what the email was about. And so the left side here, columns A through G, or A through H, are a previous example that I thought was similar. So early in the year, I was reaching back to stuff from the December drive to come up with what would be a reasonable projection. And then by about halfway through the year into RISE emails, you can see I switch around to start using earlier drafts of emails or earlier emails that we sent as the example, as the projection for what we would base that on. And that's because when we do projections, when we tell you things in our weekly or biweekly meetings, like we think this will raise about X number of dollars, or we think if you send it to this many people, here's how many folks will open it. We're basing all that on past results. And so what we try and do at Power Through is we look at your past email performance by segment, and we try and come up with what's a reasonable hypothesis for how this one will go. So, if this email does about as well as that previous email, here's what you can expect. And if it performs lower on a specific stat like open rate or click rate or the amount of money that people give on average, the average gift size, we say all that to you. And so that's what you hear us talking about in our weekly and biweekly meetings, is saying, we think this will raise about this much, but here's where it could go wrong, or here's where it could go really right, better than we expect. So that's where all the stuff comes from. So again, A through G is just the projection. It's an estimate. It's usually copied actual stats from a previous email we've done, but it's not the results. And then over here, columns I through R are basically the actual results on emails we've sent. And so that's what we're filling in on the dashboard. So the way I would do this is I'd go in, this is the most recent one we sent for the post-RISE email, as we're calling it, went out on the 21st. I was kind of wrapping up the whole series of RISE emails we've done all over the course of the summer. And so we put in if it's a test. These ones happen to be A/B content tests. If you remember the last post-RISE email, we were testing a version that Matt and I had primarily written. It was kind of more about RISE and local actions. And then we had one that was a little bit more about the hurricane response, because it was coming at the end of Florence. Some other things were kind of tagged in a little bit more of a C4 message. Kind of part of it wasn't a C4 email, but a little more in that vein. So anyway, we would put in the ID, so it's easy to go into ActionKit, and look up these individual emails if you wanted to go update the stats. And then these ones are pretty straightforward. The columns are all up here. It's the number of people the email was sent to. In this case, this would be the combined total for the two A/B test emails. So the second test we did went to 30,000 people. First test we did went to about 100,000. The open rate, you can see if you look in the formula bar here, we're actually putting in the hard data numbers from ActionKit about the number of openers. So these are very much snapshot in time. These don't live update. You get much more accurate data if you went back and looked at ActionKit, each moment and kept hitting the refresh button to get the stats on each individual email. But the idea of this is, again, just to give us something to do projections on in the future. So we usually go back about the 24-hour mark, about a day after the initial emails were sent, whether that's a test or the full blast. And that's where we're pulling these reporting numbers from. And we just copy and paste the actual whole value numbers of unique openers, unique clicks, unique yeses, or since we're doing fundraising emails, these are all essentially donations, and then the total amount raised. And this is all just coming off of the email reporting page in ActionKit to create these. The only two columns that are formulas in this particular tab are this one, which is just multiplying or dividing, the total amount raised by the number of donors to give you an average donation amount. And so that's where we often talk about this. The current and lapsed segments have much higher average donations than the non-donor segments. That would include, in this case, action takers, who the way this program was designed. These are people who've taken action in the last 30 days but have not made a donation in the last 30 days. So these would be a non-donor segment as well. So when we talk about average gift size going up and down, especially between segments, that's what we're looking at. And then this is the total amount raised over here, which again is just reported out. It's just the dollars that are raised directly from the email. There's always more money that's raised on a donate page than what comes in off the email. Even if the only way somebody could possibly find the donate page is from an email, people always find it different ways. They forward it to their friends, the friend copy and pastes the link instead of clicking on it in the email. There's ways they can get around all our clever technical tracking stuff in ActionKit. So usually, kind of back the envelope numbers, the number reported in column P here, the total amount raised from the email, it's usually about 50% of what we would attribute to the blast or to that arc. That's especially true on emails that do well enough that we send them twice. Like this is the fifth and final email we did before the RISE actions. It's the short note from Bill. We sent it once about not quite a whole week before RISE, then we sent it again just a few days before. And those two emails were really successful in terms of total fundraising. We raised about $30,000 just off the email. You can see that total down here in the lower right. But the total amount raised from that kind of period of time on the RISE campaign that came in through the donate page that was set up for this and other RISE actions was closer to 70,000. So you'll hear me talk again about this difference between email attributed fundraising and web attributed fundraising. Those two kind of go hand in hand. And it's also often wrapped in the input donations, which essentially people mail us a check. They get an email in the mail, and then as a response to that, sometimes they even print out the email and mail it into us, but the donation comes to us as a paper check, or it comes to us in some other way that we can't, kind of directly tie it back with a string and say, well, this email generated this donation. So we're pretty strict on this email segments tab or email performance tab, reporting just things that came in that we can really specifically attribute to a click on a specific email on a specific email segment. And that gives us a lot of data about relative performance between people who are current donors and lapsed donors have taken action recently. We're coming with all these different theories about focusing on the Trump bump donors or focusing on the recent action takers as a segment of people to ask for money. That's all coming from this kind of analysis on the individual email segments. So how to update it, really simple. Just go in and open each one of the email blasts you sent. And enter the data for them in each place. So blast ID goes in J, put in the sent number, which is unique to each email blast, but easy to figure out, and then do some basic division. Open rate is number of unique opens divided by this number. Click rate is the number of unique clicks divided by the total amount sent, and donate rate is the yes rate or the completion rate divided by total number of sends. So that's where that all comes from. Back of the envelope, what we're usually looking for is we want these open rates to be between 10 and 25%. A really good open rate will trend up into 30%. That's often the segments that are recent action takers, current donors, things like that. See that over here in the column I. So when we send to more active segments or more recently donating segments, they obviously are more likely to read and interact with the content as well as more likely to donate. We usually strive for, you can see it's actually been trending down a little bit over the course of the year, but earlier in the year, if I go way up to the top, even the non-donor segments were often more around 15 or 20%. And that's usually where 350's emails have been. It's been going down a little bit over time with these non-donor segments in particular. So something to watch coming up in the December drive in the future. We're definitely looking for ways to get our non-donors, our less active people who are on the general US email list, to be more interactive with our emails, starting with just literally opening them up and reading them. Click rates, we always want this to be sort of approaching 1% overall. So if I switch this to an average, you can see it would be 0.78 on average. So that's pretty good. This post-rise email, which didn't do quite as well, only had an average overall click rate of 0.24. That's a pretty crude back-of-the-envelope estimation because it's just averaging these numbers, which are themselves averages. It's not weighting them based on the number of people who get the email. But in general, that's pretty normal. So what you'd be looking for is to try and get your least active, your non-donors, non-recent action taker segments to be closer to 0.5% maybe. And the click rates for your action takers and your recent action takers to be much closer to 1 or over 1%. The current donor segment, people who've made a gift in the last year, but not in the last 2 months, always has the highest click and donate rates because those are those folks most likely to give, of course, because they've already made a donation. So looking for around 1% or approaching 1% on average overall for all these. And then donate rate, you're looking for something that approaches 0.1% on average. And again, this isn't a weighted average, so this will show up too high here because what you get is a really high unweighted average from your current, lapsed, and most recent action takers, and a really low unweighted average from your non-donors here in rows 79 and 80 on the bill email before rise. But in principle, that's what you're looking for, is something about 0.1 or higher overall for these ones. And that's basically it. Average donations go up and down a lot over the course of the year. Off season, like we are now, we're usually actually looking for something more like this, about $35 from non-donors and approaching $100 for current and lapsed donors. All that just plays into, what do you want the average gift to 350 to be? The answer is it kind of depends on who you're asking. If it's someone who gave $100 before, you of course want them to give $100 or more again. If somebody who's never made a gift before, it might be great if they just gave $3.50 or something really small, just because that would get them into that current donor category. And then of course, they're much more likely to give and much more likely to bump up the size of their gift. So the average donation is a bit of a moving target, what you're looking for in there. But back of the envelope, again, kind of rough numbers, you're looking for about $35 on average from non-donors. You're looking for about $100 on average from current, lapsed, more recent donors. And then folks like the Trump bump donors last year in the December drive, and the current action takers, people who've taken action in the last 30 days, somewhere between those two numbers, depending on the kind of appeal you're doing, you want it to be more than an average non-donor because these are more active people. You're not expecting it to be as high as someone who's given $100 or $500 before, because by definition, these are action takers who've never made a gift before. So that's what that's all about. And then page completion, we started adding this in late 2017 and early 2018 at Sabella's request. It is a really good, interesting stat to look at. This is the number of people who clicked on the email, so they went to the donation page, divided by the number of people who actually made the gift. So if this were like a petition email or a share with your friends on Facebook, something really simple to do, you'd expect that number to be like 80% or higher. Because it's a donation request, that's what we're tracking on this dashboard, we wouldn't expect it to be anywhere near that high. And in fact, something in this kind of range, 44, 45, 52% on the really successful bill emails, I mean, that's about as good as it ever gets. About half the people who go to a page actually completing a donation. Interestingly, we've seen some back and forth on what makes that number go up and down. Sometimes the best content in terms of overall fundraising, think here of a Bill year-end email, a video of him and his dog sent at the end of December, that will actually have a relatively lower completion rate. Still pretty good for the top performing donor and lapsed segments, but probably more in the like 20 or 30% range for those segments, and much closer to this kind of 1%-ish range for non-donors. The reason is a lot of people click through to watch the video, but they don't necessarily stick around and complete the transaction. So sometimes, even though you have a really good piece of content, and even though ultimately it's doing what you want, which is raising a lot of money here in column P, sometimes this page completion rate will go down if the particular content we're using for fundraising is something like a video or a picture of Bill or something like that that people are just more inclined to kind of look at, but not actually complete the donation. So in general, you're looking for something above 1% for sure on non-donors. Something 5 to 10% is pretty normal for non-donor segments, good to fine. And then for your recent donors, current donors, lapsed donors, recent action takers, definitely looking for that thing to get up closer to 35 or 40 or 50% for your top performing emails. And that's, again, just an indication of the people who go to the donate page expecting to make a donation and then actually complete that transaction. So that's all. There's a fair amount on the email performance or email segments tab, but since I can't show you how to copy and paste the data out, I did want to spend a little bit more time on it and also talk about projections a little bit more so you know what to expect. So the next things we're going to talk about are the by page, by email, and the summary by type, which all actually come off the same report. Again, because I can't run it in ActionKit, I'm going to show you what it looks like when you download it. So the name of the report is, the most current version anyway, is PT 2017 EOY Drive Transaction Copy. So this is just, I copied the end of 2017 end of year drive report. And this is now set up to run all transactions that were completed correctly, actually went through between January 5, 2018 and the end of September. So basically the rest of the fiscal year for 2018. And when you run the report, that's how to find it, is you would type in bracket PT 2017 EOY Drive, and that'll give you a link to this stuff where you can download this whole thing. And then this is what it would spit out if you run it as a CSV, which is my suggestion. Don't try and look at the whole thing because it's quite a lot of rows. This is one I ran just earlier this week before I lost my ActionKit, and it's 49,953 rows long, so it's a lot of stuff. So here's what the columns are, and I'm just going to do quick, if you know Excel or if you use other similar things, I'll freeze the top row so you can. So here's what you get: is you get a transaction ID. We do this so that we are never looking at individual donor contact information, and there's no risk of it being lost or shared or anything like that. This is the unique identifier generated by ActionKit every time it correctly processes a credit card. This order completed, true, false, is just confirming that each and every item in this was correctly run. The credit card was actually charged. And then the other columns are the ones we're looking at. So the order amount, that's the amount that was charged. The created at date is the date that the gift was originally created. So you can see the first several thousand rows in this are recurring donations. That's column D, is whether it is or is not a recurring gift. And this is the date. So for recurring gifts, this is the date the recurring gift was created. The actual donation was processed more recently than that. And it's not necessarily telling you this is when the original donation was run. This is just telling you the total amount that was given in this period. But the created date for one-time donations will be the same as the date when the order was created. Recurring, that's only two options: recurring or one-time. We already talked about this one. And then this is the page title, so which donate page they gave the gift on. For users who have a recurring gift, this is how many monthly payments they've made. So this user has made 94 monthly gifts, for example. And that which date was their first date. So this is helpful for going back and figuring out, longevity with recurring donors, people who make more than one gift in a year. Or when was the first gift? It's often back quite a ways in time, 2009, 2008, something like that would be out of the question. The source, these are general categories. These are the tracking codes that come into things. So I'll talk more about that in a minute. And then mailing ID and subjects ID. This is when we're running gifts that were given to a specific email. This tells you what the ID was and what the subject line of the email was. So it lets us, again, group performance by email. So far, all I did was I just did a quick hold the first row so we can always see those column IDs when we go. When you look at the donation tracking dashboard here, the first thing we want to come up with, so we're going to start with updating this, and then we create 2 pivot tables to update these 2 tabs, the by page and by email. So to come up with reporting on these first big numbers, gross income, first thing we do to come up with one-time gifts is we're just going to look at here. I'm going to add a filter. I'm doing all this in Excel. You could obviously do this in Google Sheets or something if you wanted to. It is a lot of data, so I do suggest something that's like a downloaded on your hard drive email filtering or data filtering engine. So Excel works great. Pages probably will work fine. I don't use it a lot, but you get the idea. So I've just said I want to filter based on the column headings, right? And so when I come over here to recurring, you get 2 choices. You can see one time, recurring, or both recurring and one time. I'm going to uncheck recurring, so I'm just looking at one-time donations. And then as a rule, we only want to report and look at donations that are under $5,000. That's how you define as opposed to mid-level donations. Sorry, my computer gets a little slow when I'm recording things and running this and also looking at Excel. See if that comes back in just a second. So we want to report on just donations that are under $5,000 one time. So that's easy in Excel. I'm in here and say I want it to be less than 5,000. So now what this will give me is every transaction that was processed correctly, order completed is true, between January 5 and the present date in September 2018, that is less than $5,000. So if you hold Shift and Control, you can select down that whole column, and you can see it gives you a total down here in the bottom right, and that's what I will be using. You can also, you could put in a cell down here in row 4,900 and 954, 49,954, excuse me. That would, just do a sum and count. But this works fine. I just need to know the number. So that's 545,859.56. If I come back over here, you can see just a little, I ran this report a few days ago. There it is. And that's what I just said. 545,859.56. Waiting for this to kick back in. So the next thing we're going to want to write is the total one-time gifts under $5,000 from the category called mailing, which is meaning it is attributable to an individual email blast. Oh, poor sad little computer. So if I want to filter based on those categories, mailing, import, website, here's where I'm looking, is the source code. So you can see you get a couple of different ones, a few others to point out. We'll come back and talk more about these in a minute. 350.org is the source tag that comes through for donations that just came through that homepage drop-down or pop-up menu we put up. We did this on our 350 Rise campaign. We installed a drop-down on the homepage for a couple weeks. We raised a fair amount of money through that individual pop-up menu on the homepage, so that's good. There's a couple other little ones in here that we just roll into the website category. So actually what we're looking for is I usually come in here, select none, and then just select mailing. But these will all get rolled into website 350.org. Again, that's the ones from the homepage dropdown. Conf is another tracking code. It actually hasn't been in use for years, but there are a couple of recurring donors, so that's why that shows up. The main one is website. You'll see most of the donations are in there. Share is a tracking code that gets appended to people who share a donate page with their friends, and then they come back and click on it. So again, it's not connected to an email we sent. It's connected to their friend sharing the donate page. So we get a fair number of donations through that, not a huge amount of money over the course of a year, a couple $1,000s, but a decent number of donations. We roll that into the website stuff. And then these couple of non-scroll, Revere, Donate, Scrolling Journey, those again are somewhat older testing things, and the Revere ones are obviously from your texting program with Revere. We haven't used it a whole lot. It's not a lot of money in those, but that's where those tracking codes show up. For now, though, I'm just looking for the mailing donations, and this is just one-time donations under $5,000. So again, I don't need to change anything about this filter, but just reminding you that I do have a filter on the order amount category here for donations that are less than $5,000. Go up to the top row, hit Shift Control, and select down, and that'll select just all the cells that meet our various filter criteria. And that total is 123, 130, 72. And that's still what I have here. Again, I ran this report a few days ago, updated the dashboard, so all these numbers should come up the same. So that's how we do the total one-time donations, the total one-time donations to mail. For website and input donations, this is kind of a carryover from the December drives dating back to 2016, but we were interested in looking at results by small, which was less than $350 one-time donations, and mid-level, which is $350 to $4,999.99. So everything less than $5,000, but more than $350. We call those mid-level donors. So it doesn't, the results are not as illuminating in the non-December drive time. We don't get a lot of mid-level donations, or they tend to just kind of track with whatever gets the most small-level donations. So not necessarily terribly actionable intelligence, but does give you some idea of what we're talking about. So the way that we would sort those in Excel there we go. So if I came over, let's say we wanted to look at the website, or let's do the input donations, that's a little simpler. Just import. So these are, again, people who mail in or send in a paper donation, give us cash, something like that, that gets recorded offline essentially, but then we add them into ActionKit so we have a record of the donation, and it gets added to their supporter record in ActionKit, so later on we can go target them as current or lapsed donors as appropriate. So current donors, and say I wanted to look first at the mid-level donors, I'd go to number filter. If I wanted to do just the small donors, I'd do less than 350. Because I want to do mid-level donors, I want to pick between. And so I'm going to say it's greater than or equal to 350, and less than or equal to 4,999. 0.99 if you want, but we don't usually get fractional donations, so just those are fine. Again, just select the top cell, down to the bottom cell, it'll automatically apply the filters for you, and that's 133, 170, 36, which is what I have. So that was the mid-level donations in the import or input category. There you go. So you repeat that for each one of these. Essentially, I won't make you watch while I do it because all the numbers are here. But you do the total one-time gifts for website, then you do the total less than 350, and then the total between 350 and 4,999. And then for input, we just showed you how to do it for the mid-level donors, but you do it for all one-time donors less than 5,000, then just for all one-time donors less than 350, and then for all one-time donors between 350 and 499. Total recurring, we do report on that stuff, so I'll just show you where we pull those numbers from. So I'm going to clear that filter and then make a new one. So we don't get a lot of recurring donations more than 5,000, but just as a precaution, we'll go ahead and say we want to make sure these are all donations less than, individual donations less than 5,000, not lifetime gift. And then I change this to the filter. Filter. And then I come in and unselect one time. And this will give me all the one-time donations process, or all the recurring donations, excuse me, process between January 5, 2018 and now. There it is, 53,344. And then the row right below it down here, row 12, that says new recurring. So that's essentially a count of all the recurring gifts that were created. The gift, the monthly donation was created after January 5, 2018. And so the way that I would do that is come to this created date. And this takes a minute to load when you do it, especially this time in the year, because there are a lot of recurring gifts that have processed. Everybody's monthly gift for 9 months, almost $1 million worth of donations. And you want to say that the date filter is after. And I just come over to the calendar and pick everything after January 5, 2018. And again, the reason we picked that is just because there's always, we did our last December Drive 2017 fundraiser on the 31st. And so months and months ago, Matt and I decided, we count all the donations that came in the first part of that week as being connected to the year-end drive. And then we picked January 5 as kind of a cutoff for like the rest of the fiscal year. They do have timestamps in them. If you ever wanted to come back and do that more specifically, you can do that. But this works pretty well for our purposes. Every recurring donation was created after January 5, 2018, and that's where we get this total of 85,370. So again, many of those people have donated more than one time since January 5th. It's just saying that they were new, created recurring donors in this period. And then the increased, in this case, we did this one email late spring in 2018, where we sent an email from Bill asking people to become recurring donors if they weren't. And if they were existing recurring donors, we asked them to increase their gift. So this is the amount of increase. People were already giving $15 a month, and they said, I'll bump up to $25. We counted that as $10 of increased recurring. So you see that in two places here. One is $789 a month. More was increased from that one email we sent from Bill in late spring. And then the average amount that people increased was $11.43. So it wasn't that they're giving $11.43. It's that they increased their gift, whatever they were giving before, $10, $15, $50 a month. The average amount they went up, so they're now giving $25 or $60 a month. The average amount of that increase, the difference between the two numbers before and after, is $11.43. So that's what all that stuff is. The rest of these are just averages. So the same way we went and looked at the average gift or the total number of gifts, we just switched that to an average and came up with, here's your average overall gift, your average gift under $350, and your average gift between $350 and $4,999. So that's pretty much all this stuff. The email numbers are just, you can see in the formula bar, we're just averaging the appropriate columns from this email performance or email segment tab over here. So we're just looking at, it's not quite a real average, it's the average of averages. But it does give you, some basic back of the envelope numbers to work from. And so that's why we include that stuff, just to give you an idea. Generally, you're looking for open rates on the whole around 20%. You're looking for click rates approaching 1% and donate rates between between 0.1 and 1%. So that's where we pull all those numbers from. And those are analogous, the same, multiple average of averages is what we use to create these ones. So that's all good. So last thing I want to show you is how we do these two tabs by page and by email, and then both real quick just with these things called pivot tables. You can do them in both Google Sheets and, of course, in Microsoft Excel. I do them in Excel, so that's what I'll show you. I'm going to clear all my filters. So unfiltered, and then Shift Control, go all the way down, select everything in that. Again, each transaction has a transaction ID, so whenever I want to select all the way down, I always do either transaction ID or order amount. Those two have a value for every row here. Not every row has a value for the original date. If it's somebody's first gift, they wouldn't have anything in this value, in this column. And of course, not everybody has something in the mailing ID because not everybody gives to emails. So you select all those, and then you want to insert a pivot table. And these defaults are fine, but the short version is you want to pick, I have selected the range of data that I want to put in the pivot table. And I'm going to stick it in the new worksheet, which just makes it a little easier to see. So pivot tables essentially let you take any individual column heading. So if you remember, all these values, transaction ID, order amount current, created at date, is recurring, all this stuff, that's the same as our headings here. And basically what I can do is I can, using a pivot table, I can kind of flip those to make any individual row be the same as a column heading, and I can pick which column headings I want. So you kind of get like transaction IDs divided by order amounts, or you can, in this case, what we're looking for is we want a count of transaction IDs and a sum of the amount given, and then I want to sort that by either our page or the individual email blast. So we're going to start with the page. That's a little bit easier. So now you can see a bunch of the uploads show up. Just the way they're named. Down here, there is Donate to Help Build. These are our default pages. Here's the Stop Keystone stuff, right? Those different ones. So one thing is a lot of these page IDs are actually really old. These are coming from 2008, 2009, 2010. That's because I haven't filtered out the recurring donations yet. So I'm going to drop recurring into that filter area. And I also still want to suppress all my donations over $5,000. I'm going to drop that into the filter too. So first I'm going to say I only want to know about one-time donations. And then second, I'm going to say I want to see multiple donation amounts. But then if I come down here, you can see there's some stuff clocked in Action Kit, which isn't really generated by our work. It's all these donations over $5,000. These ones with weird values are usually stock transfers. I'm just going to uncheck all the values that are over $5,000. Not that many of them, but it's a lot of money, you know, more than $1 million because of several very large gifts. But this one, 4,000 and everything under that, those are all fair game to count towards our work. So now what I've got is a count for each page of the number of people who donated and the total amount of money that was donated, where the value of amount donated is less than $5,000 for the individual transaction, and where none of the values are recurring donations. So I'm just going to select all this, copy it, back over to our Google Sheet. I'm going to say paste values only. In just a minute, you'll see these values get replaced by what was in the Google Sheet. It's actually the same stuff, but don't worry about that for a minute. There we go. So you can see now these are not sorted by amount. So in Google Sheets, we just say sort sheet Z to A. As usual, the default donate page comes up first. It gets a lot of donations. We would usually class into this category called website. So what you know now is of the $170,000 reported as website income, about 167,000 of it is from from the default donate page. And that's why we say, you know, the amount raised by an email is usually more than that. You can also see the total amount raised on the donate Rise for Climate. You know, 73,000. That's much higher than what you would get if you added up all the performance from our individual email blasts. And that's because, again, people come back to the donate page from other sources, from sharing with their friends, other things like that. And then we get a couple of other funny ones in here: deposit uploads, PayPal uploads, things like that. They show up as bulk transactions. Many of those would end up in the input or import category. but they show up like an individual donate page when you upload them into ActionKit. So that's how they get reported here, is like they were a donate page. But as you'd expect, two things that have raised the most money since January 5, 2018 to present, the default donate page and the Rise campaign. And then after that, fair ways down, but still important, some other little things. We do sometimes get some little Australian things. We try to do filters to remove as much of the Australian info as we can. Sometimes when they upload individual things, like this is direct deposits into the Australia account, because they share an ActionKit account with us, it doesn't show up as an Australian credit card processor, which is what we're filtering on. So there are a couple of those. You can remove them if you want. It doesn't change the total amounts raised very much at all, but they do slip into this report, and the by page reporting in particular. So that was our count for pages. And then the by email, I'm just going to replace, instead of having the rows be individual emails, I'm going to have the rows be individual pages. I'm going to have them be individual emails. All my filters are still in place on this, the recurring versus one time, and the total amount being less than 5,000. So I can just select all this. You'll notice though, if I go all the way down, there's one called blank. So that's all the income that didn't come from an email, doesn't have a subject line or an email ID associated with it. So I leave that one off and just copy everything else. Come to the by email tab. And again, I'm just going to paste these as values. We'll let that run for a minute, and then I'm going to do another sort in that column C to bring the highest values to the top. And you'll see just what you see here, which is the top performing emails, again, since January 5, 2018, are the bill email related to Rise right before that, and then it goes down from there, but a couple of the other Rise emails that scored quite high. Just waiting for our paste to go through. It's a lot more rows when I paste the email stuff than the page stuff, because there's a lot more individual black. Here we go. Again, just sorting this. Largest, smallest. So this request, again, I'm always doing this, total raised on this one, it gives you the subject line first, and then this number in parentheses is the blast ID. So if I went, wow, that was really good, which email was that? I'll request user first name, and come back over to the email performance tab. And I could do a search for it, but it happens to be right here. It's 50089. So I know that was the current donor segment of that last bill email that went right before. And you can see the total is actually a little bit higher. So what I'm reporting here came off the email reporting tab. There's always a little bit more email that comes in, or a little bit more money that comes in kind of after the fact. So that's why this number is 20,000, a little bit higher than the 17,935 report here. That's basically this email. This report was run several weeks after the email had been sent. And this email reporting was run about 24 hours after the email was sent. So that's why the number is just a little bit higher. So by email, a little bit more definitive or kind of time specific, up to the minute reporting on that. But mostly what it does is it gives you a sense of which were our most successful emails. And so you can go back and see, well, the most successful one was current donors asked by bill about Rise right before Rise. Groundbreaking moment was another email about Rise, but a little bit earlier. Big chance push for our leaders into the Rise email. Making Rise a success. This is a different segment of the same one. You can tell it's a resend because we said making Rise a success RE. So we resent that request user first name email. Same subject line as this, but resent. So that's probably the current donors again. So it says 50407. Yep, that was the resend to current donors of Bill's email. So you get the idea. You can get a pretty good sense of what's been the most successful blasts overall this year, or overall in the time period you're reporting on, as you look through that. So that's basically it. That's my update stuff. Pull that PT 2017 or make a copy of it for next fiscal year, and just change the values to be, you know, October 1st, 2018 through the end of the year, whatever you want. And that'll give you the transaction level reporting that you need to go recreate this dashboard and run performance on individual emails, on pages, by our categories like website, email, input. It'll also give you the start of what you need to go back and look at that email performance or email segment performance stuff, so that you can get a handle on, you know, what to expect from future blasts you send and what kind of segments you might want to look at to improve performance overall. As always, if you have any questions about any of this stuff, drop me an email, give me a text, whatever, find me on Slack, and let me know what else I can help you with. It's been a joy and pleasure working with you all for the last few years on fundraising stuff. Hope we'll get to do some more of it in the future, or at least send some more emails about Bill and his dog. I'm Drew from Power Through. Thanks.